Hey, it's Katie, and welcome back to my booktube channel. For today's video, I'll be doing a spoiler-free review of A Deal with the Elf King by Elise Kova, and I really enjoyed this. I gave it 5 stars, and I have a full review on Goodreads, which is also linked below for you guys, but I'm just going to be honest and say that I read this like a week or two ago, so these thoughts are not as fresh as I wanted them to be, so hopefully I can still articulate how much I really loved this book for you guys. And the first thing I want to do is give you a summary for those of you that haven't heard about this book. The first thing that caught my attention about this book is the little blurb that says, "The elves come for 2 things, war and wives. In both cases, they come for death." And that just grabbed my attention. I've never read a book that involves elves, so I thought that was really cool. But basically, this takes place in a world where 3,000 years ago, humans were hunted by powerful races with wild magic, and this treaty was formed. So for centuries now, the elves have taken a young woman from our main character, Luella's village, to be their human queen. To be chosen as a mark is kind of known as the Mark of Death, and our main character, Luella, is 19, and she is relieved that she has not been chosen to be the human queen. Now, Luella is dedicated to studying herbology and becoming the town's only healer. But then, suddenly, the Elf King comes to town for her, and everything she thought she knew about life and herself was a lie. Luella is taken to a land filled with wild magic, and she's forced to be the new queen to a cold yet handsome elf king. Once she's there, she learns about a dying world that only she can save. Before going into this book, I had really high expectations. I've seen this book on BookTube and BookTok, and I have had it on my TBR for a very long time, but I can never find it in stores. I feel like it always said that certain stores had it, and I would go to buy this book, and they never had it. So I finally caved and bought this one online for my birthday, and I'm so glad that I did. It definitely did not disappoint, even with my high expectations. And I also heard that this might be a Hades and Persephone retelling, which I am a sucker for. I love mythology, especially Hades and Persephone, so I can definitely see those vibes through this story. So if that's something that you enjoy, you should definitely check this out. It's not a super obvious retelling because they have different characters and it's a different concept. They're not like gods and goddesses or anything like that, but it does still have very similar elements. I also started trying this new thing where I'm trying to slow down my reading so I can enjoy the books a lot more, because I got to a point where I was flying through books and reading a book a day, which is great, but I have this bad habit of skipping all the descriptive paragraphs, and usually it just helps me read faster, and I still comprehend the story, so I didn't really see anything wrong with it. But now that I've tried to slow it down and, read all the words in here instead of just some of them, I have really been able to dive into these stories and connect with the books so much better. And I think it's really working for me. And this was the first book I tried that with. And I think that's the main reason why I really fell in love with this world. But in case you couldn't tell from the synopsis, this book has immaculate world building. It's so good, and I feel like I can't really explain it well right now, especially because I don't want to spoil anything, and I feel like I would if I would try to explain how great the world is. But there's also a map in here, so let me show you that real quick, and it's so beautiful, and I feel like I would love to be a part of this world. It sounded really scary at first because obviously all of the humans are fearful of the Elf King and all the elves, but it was really cool to see both sides of it and get to know both separate worlds. I thought that was really cool, and also you learn that there is a balance between the two that has to be kept. And again, I don't want to go into too much detail so I don't spoil it for you guys, but that's so intricate and it's just so cool. Trying to think about how that would work and wrap my head around it. It was one of my favorite elements. I thought the world building was just so great. The magic in here was also really unique and captivating. I feel like I'm really picky with the types of magic I enjoy in books because I love books that have magic, but sometimes it's too basic and it doesn't feel very fleshed out, but I really enjoyed this, especially because you get to watch a character who didn't think she had any magic figure out what her powers are, what her job with those powers could be, and like everything she can accomplish. And it was just really fun to see her develop those powers and grow throughout the book. And also, I thought the pacing of this book was really, really great as well. I feel like some books are too slow or too fast, especially because this is a fantasy standalone. I didn't say that. This is a fantasy romance standalone. So Elise Kova had to create this intricate world, at the beginning, and then give us these characters that are just so great and I connected with, and then also give us a great plot. And so I feel like that's usually a lot to accomplish for a fantasy in just a standalone, but she did a great job. I feel like, again, typically I don't enjoy the pacing of fantasy standalones. I think they're either super slow and don't really dive deep enough into certain things, or you feel like it dives deep enough, but then you're left wanting more at the end and you still have questions. But she did a great job of wrapping up the story by the end. The pacing was amazing, so you really get to know the world and the characters as our main character, Luella, gets to know them as well, and it just kind of unfolds in the perfect way. I really, really appreciated the pacing. Overall, obviously, I really enjoyed Elise Kova's writing. I hadn't read a book by her before, so I wasn't really sure how I would feel, but she did not disappoint. I loved her writing. It literally played like a movie in my head, and I can always picture the books, but they don't always play out so vividly like this one did. So I loved that. And she also did a great job of making each character really fleshed out and distinct, and they each had their own purpose to the story, which I also really, really enjoyed. And I just get so happy when I look at this cover. It gives me so many great emotions, and it's just so fun. And my favorite element was obviously the romance, because this is definitely a slow burn enemies to lovers romance, and also it's like a forced marriage, or like I guess not really an arranged marriage, but kind of like she's just kind of forced to marry the Elf King against her will, which kind of sounds terrible when you put it like that, but obviously the beginning of their marriage comes with a lot of hatred from her, and then it starts to develop into more understanding and, potentially some romance after that. Like I said, this was 100% a slow burn romance, which I am a sucker for. It really took its time developing throughout the whole story until like the very end, and I love books like that because slow burns are just great. Like, there's amazing banter. It really takes time, and it feels more realistic because it takes them a while for their feelings to develop. I'm not really somebody that likes insta love or anything like that, so I can really appreciate a good slow burn romance like this one. This book also has some spice to it, so if that's something you enjoy, there's definitely some elements in here. I thought it was done really well. I prefer books that don't have too much spice, because sometimes I feel like a relationship is just built too much on the smut and that element, and if there's not enough of a foundation in other parts of the relationship, I get really frustrated with how much like spice and smut there is. But in this case, there was just enough smut to be like satisfied and happy with it, but also it wasn't overwhelming, and there were enough elements in the rest of their relationship to really appreciate all of the smut. I know I always say that enemies to lovers is my favorite trope, and it's definitely top 3 for me, but this book reminded me of my favorite trope of all time, which is touch her and I'll kill you. And I feel like the Elf King does a great job of protecting Luella whenever he can, and even when they aren't technically friends or more than that, he still does his best to keep her safe and will definitely fight people for her. And I love that. It's like my favorite element in a fantasy romance. Actually, just in any romance in general. I love when a guy is really protective over his girl, and this book definitely gives me those vibes. Taking my time reading this book really, really paid off. I was more invested and enjoyed this book way more than any other book I had read up to this point, and it's definitely something I'm going to try to apply to every book I read in the future. It made me love these characters in this world so much more, and I'm very excited to read more from Elise Kova, because in terms of reading the first book from a certain author, I feel like this was a great first one to read. This book has a companion novel that came out very recently. I think it came out August 19th, and it's called A Dance with the Fae Prince, if I remember correctly. And it sounds great. It takes place, I think, in the same world, or it's definitely part of the same series, Married to Magic. And I'm very excited. It's also a loose retelling of something. I can't remember what. I want to say Cinderella, but I'm not positive. But based on how much I loved Elise Kova's writing and this world, I'm definitely going to continue. I actually have already purchased it for my Kindle. I just bought a Kindle yesterday. I'm so excited. It's already shipped. It's on its way, and I cannot wait. So I also got Kindle Unlimited, and there's so many books I want to read. So if you have any suggestions for what your favorite Kindle Unlimited book is, please let me know below. I genuinely am so excited. And I'm pretty sure A Dance with the Fae Prince is on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have that, you should totally check that one out too. But I am just so excited. I really enjoyed this book. If you're waiting for a sign to pick this one up, you totally should. I gave it 5 stars, and you should definitely read it and let me know what you think. Hopefully you enjoyed hearing my thoughts about it. If you did, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I would really, really appreciate it. And if you do subscribe, please click the notification bell so you know when I upload next. Thank you guys so much for watching. I can't wait to see you in my next video.